Okay, so the next step is to make your pleats. So you're going to take your main panel, so it would be this one that you cut out, and since you already marked where the pleat lines are, then you can just, I marked them both on the front and on the back. And here you will take your fabric and then fold it so that the pleat lines line up. You will see the wrong side up, and then in between will be the right side. And then you're going to pin it so that it holds in place. Okay? So now you're just going to sew along that the line that I marked, that blue line that I marked, which is just what I copied off of the pattern piece. That's how it's going to turn out. And then I went ahead on the other one and did all of the pleats, and then we're going to iron them down and then put a basting stitch that will hold them in place. So again, this is what this one looks like. I just sewed along that blue line, and then this is what it'll turn out as. This is my other main panel. Okay, so now I've ironed the pleats and I pinned them in place so they stay in place, and we're going to, the next step is to do a basting stitch about 1/4 of an inch in. And okay, so there you have the basting stitch on both of the main panels, so it will hold your pleats in place. Okay, so the next step is to take your exterior trim and fold it with the wrong sides together. So you're going to fold it like this, and you're going to press a crease so that it stays in place. You're going to do it to both of them. Okay, now you're going to take one of your main panels, and then the exterior trim, and with that has already been creased, and you're just going to pin it in place. Do that for both of your main pieces, main side panels. Okay, so I would just like to say that I had made a mistake when I was cutting out the trim and the yoke. I switched the fabrics, so the trim was actually this, and the yoke was in this fabric that the trim is currently. This is what happens when you're not paying attention and when you're watching a 2.5-year-old while you're sewing. So make sure that you are in a quiet place or have your music on, but can actually concentrate on what you're cutting. Luckily, I had extra fabric and extra interfacing, so I could just cut out a new piece of the yoke and the trim. But make sure, because you might have bought exactly the amount of fabric that you think you needed and didn't buy any extra, and then what do? What if you can't find that specific fabric anymore? So just a warning, be sure to, before you cut anything, make sure you are following all the instructions and that you can actually concentrate on what you're doing. Okay, so I reread the instructions, and I think I said before there was a 3/4 inch seam, but it's a 3/8 inch seam, and it's just a regular stitch. So right now, from the back side, you can see the 1/4 inch basting stitch that held your pleats in place, and now your 3/8 inch seam that will hold your trim in place. Okay, so now you're going to take your yoke and you're going to pin it in place so that it looks like this, and you're going to do a 1/2 inch seam on it so that when you open it, it'll open like that with the trim showing. Okay, so this is what your yoke, exterior trim, and the side panel will look like after you are done. Okay, now what I have done here is I pinned those two panels that we just created, the side panel trim and the yoke. You match the dots that you marked, and you match them on both sides. Then I marked a 1/2 inch from the top of the panel, and you are going to sew a 1/2 inch seam from the 1/2 inch mark to the dot, back stitching on both sides. It will look like this. We will be sewing a 1/2 inch seam. This is what your stitching will look like. You're going to do the same thing on the other side. So matching up the dots and then sewing a 1/2 inch seam along the edge. Well, the dots are pretty much matched up, but you're going to just pin it in place and then sew a 1/2 inch seam around. Okay, so now you're just going to clip along the curved edges. Now this will help it so that it doesn't bunch up, and maybe about every 1/2 inch.